Now we're going to look at sharpening. And sharpening is usually the last thing that you do to your image before you send it to the printer or upload it to the web. So you would first go in, do all your retouching, final exposure adjustments, any special effects, filters, anything else that you want to do to your image. Then you would crop it, and then you would sharpen it. Now, something people always have a hard time understanding is exactly what sharpening does to the image. You cannot go into Photoshop and fix an image that was taken out of focus and make it sharp by pushing a couple of buttons in Photoshop. That's not the way it works. Sharpening brings out the detail and makes images pop by adjusting the contrast of the pixels, lightness and darkness. So the white pixels and black pixels, etc. And a lot of times a question people ask is, well, how do I know which image I need to sharpen? And the answer is all of them. When you take a picture in a digital camera or you scan a picture using a scanner, the process of converting those images into pixels softens the images and brings about a loss in detail. Now, it's really important to always start out with as sharp an image as possible. So you'll want to use a tripod when taking pictures if possible, also a remote so that you don't have any camera shake. And you want to make sure that you're taking an image with as little noise as possible. So that means paying attention to your ISO and your camera settings. So once again, it's always important to start out with as good an image, as high quality an image in focus, correctly exposed, etc. as possible. Now additionally, one thing that can help is when you're purchasing your lenses for your camera, to buy lenses that have built-in image stabilization. And that will reduce camera shake and focus issues and give you sharper images as well. So let's go ahead and open an image and take a look at some of the different things you can do using the sharpening filters in Photoshop. We're going to start with the water can image. So I'm going to open this, and the image looks good. It actually looks like it's in focus. You wouldn't think there's anything wrong with it. The first thing I'm going to do is duplicate my background layer. You will always want to do your sharpening on its own layer. And so whether you're duplicating that background layer, or we'll go over some techniques for creating smart object layers, etc., you will want to do sharpening on its own layer. And that's so that you can reduce the effect and change the blend modes, etc. Now it's going to be very important that before you do any sharpening on your images that you reduce the noise in your image. And what you need to do is read up on page 487 in the book on how you can go about reducing the noise in your images. So let's take a look at the Sharpen filters. Go to Filter, come down to Sharpen, and you can see that there are 6 different sharpening filters: Shake Reduction, Sharpen, Sharpen Edges, Sharpen More, Smart Sharpen, and Unsharp Mask. The 2 used most often are going to be Smart Sharpen and Unsharp Mask. Now, for many years, Unsharp Mask has been the standard for sharpening images, and Smart Sharpen is a newer filter that has a lot more versatility and functionality. But let's take a look at Unsharp Mask first. So what you'll see when the Unsharp Mask window opens is that we have a preview window here that we can adjust the zoom that we see, and you can see that I can change the area of the image by dragging my hand around in the preview window. Or if I come over to the image, you can see my cursor has turned into a little square, and if I click on different parts of the image, then it changes what I'm seeing in my preview window. There's a preview checkbox that will allow us to see our changes live on our image in Photoshop. And then down here we have 3 sliders. We have amount, radius, and threshold. And amount controls the sharpening intensity. And the range is from 1 to 500%. And what this does is it makes the light pixels lighter and the dark pixels darker. So at 500%, it's making all the light pixels along the edges of the image white and all the dark ones black, which actually creates a halo on your image, and you don't want that. So you would never use it at 500%. Usually for best results, you'll keep the setting between 50% and 150%. Very rarely will you exceed that. Now, radius controls the width of the sharpening halo by telling Photoshop how many pixels on each side of the edge should be analyzed and adjusted. So when you have a very detailed image, your radius may be set at 0.7 or 0.5 pixels. For a less detailed image, then you may have a radius of up to 3 or 3.5. However, a good rule of thumb would be that you don't want to exceed 4 for your pixel number. And if you have a higher pixel number, then generally you're going to turn down the amount. So radius and amount offset each other somewhat. Now, threshold allows you to control how different neighboring pixels have to be from each other before Photoshop considers them an edge. And a smaller number on threshold means that it is going to look at every pixel in the image. In threshold, when it is set at 0, that means it's looking at every single pixel in the image. A good rule of thumb is you generally keep this set between 3 and 20. It just depends on how much detail and how many different color ranges and lighting ranges that you have in the image. So let me show you some of the varying effects on this image. If I turn the amount down to 5%, bring my radius down to 0.5 pixels, and bring my threshold up, you can see not a lot of difference in the original and the adjustments. And so you can just play with the different sliders until you find something that you think works. I'm going to put my threshold on about 3. I'm going to set my radius to about 2. I'm going to bump my amount up to about 145% or 140%. And now we start to see a little more of the effect of the sharpening. So if I click here, my preview, there's the before and here's the after. And that's quite a bit of difference. I might bring my radius down just a little bit to maybe 1.5. Still much sharper. This is a pretty detailed image. I'm going to bring it down to 1. And that's still a lot better than what it was previously. And so I'm going to leave this one at 140% radius of 1 and threshold of 3. Now, there is no just set standard. You're going to have to go and look at each individual image and adjust it as needed. So I'm going to click OK. And the other thing that is very important is anytime you sharpen an image, you need to change the layer that you did the sharpening on to a luminosity blend mode. And that is because sometimes when you sharpen images, it can cause a color shift. So by changing it to luminosity, luminosity is free of color, and so you're removing all the colors and just applying the lightness and darkness changes used by Unsharp mask to sharpen the images. So if I turn the layer off, we can see before, and on we can see after. Let me zoom in to a few areas so you can see it a little clearer. So there's before and here's after. Yes, it is a subtle difference. You don't want someone to look at the image and think, oh, they've sharpened that. You want it to appear natural. And so once again, here's before. and here's after. Before and after. Now you're going to do your first assignment for 11A using the bicycle image, and you're going to apply an Unsharp mask filter to the bicycle image. Don't forget to create a new layer, change the layer to luminosity, and keep your settings within the range that I discussed previously. So once again, you're going to duplicate your background layer, go in, run your Unsharp mask filter, change your blend mode to luminosity, and then you're going to save this as 11A, your last name, underscore bike, and it's going to be in your Chapter 11 folder. Alright, so next let's look at Unsharp Mask for portraits. Going to go into Bridge, and I am going to open portrait.jpg down here. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so we can see more of the mother's face, and it looks pretty sharp. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to do is duplicate my background layer, go to Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. And we can see that my previous adjustment might be a little bit harsh. Okay, for portraits you want things to be a little softer. So for a portrait you would probably set your amount to between 75 and 90%. You would leave your radius set to about 2. And your threshold would be set on 3. So if I click preview, you can see, especially on her eyes, we're getting sharper. But we haven't over sharpened the skin. Now when sharpening objects, landscapes, and animals, this can be a little bit more difficult, and so what you have to do is pay close attention to your image as you're doing the sharpening. But you would up the amount from a portrait to about 120%, place your radius lower at about 1, and leave your threshold at 3. Now for basic everyday objects, commercial things, landscapes, etc., a good default is an amount of 85% with a radius of 1 and a threshold of 4. That tends to work when you don't really have an idea of exactly what you want. And when sharpening for the web, after it's been resized and cropped, what you'll want to do is add in some of the sharpness to replace the blur that you get for downsizing an image. And so for sharpening for web, you would set your amount at 200%, the radius at 0.3, and the threshold down to 0. Again, those settings can be found on pages 489 and 490 in your book. Alright, click preview. Again, this is portrait, so I've got this set at 75% with a radius of 2.0 and a threshold of 3. And the main area that you see a difference in is going to be the eyes. And so if I click and hold down on the eye, you see the before, and when I let up, the after. Or I can click the preview, which here's the after, and there's the before. So just a slight difference. Going to cancel out of that. And that is the Unsharp mask. Another technique for using Unsharp mask to sharpen your images is to first convert them to smart objects. And so let's open another image. Close this one. Going to go to Bridge. Alright, so now we want to go in and open the cake pop image. So double click on that to open it. Duplicate the background layer. You're going to be turning this in as 11B, so you'll want to work along. Now this image needs a levels adjustment. So go ahead and select levels adjustment layer and apply a slight levels adjustment to the image. when you have your levels adjustment where you want it to be, you're going to select the levels adjustment layer and your background duplicate layer, and you're going to go to your layer menu and convert to Smart Object. And you'll see that those two are merged into one Smart Object layer. Now we're going to apply our Sharpness filter to our Smart Object layer. So we're going to go Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. Make sure that Preview is turned on, and go ahead and go in and look at one area of the image that you feel gives you good detail. And you're going to need to go in and adjust the amount, radius, and threshold. I'm going to bump this one up a little bit to about 145. I'm going to set my radius at 2, and I'm going to leave my threshold at 3. And so I'm going to click and hold down, and you can see it's made quite a big difference. And if I click the preview to see the before and after, it's a little bit harder to see in the large image. And so I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. And when I zoom in, now when I click the preview before and after, we can see the difference that our Unsharp Mask filter has made. Go ahead, once you have your settings, click OK, and you'll see that your Smart Filter is applied to your Smart Object. And what that means is that you can always double click down here in your Unsharp Mask Smart Filter, and it will open up the Unsharp Mask window and allow you to make changes. Cancel out of that. Now, one thing that's nice is when you have a filter mask, you can selectively apply your sharpening to different parts of the image. So if you didn't want to apply the Unsharp mask to one part of the image or only to a specific part of the image, you could always fill in your mask with black, and you can see that the sharpening is now removed or hidden by the mask. And then you can switch to a white brush. I'm going to set this at 100%. And you can go in and you can paint on your image exactly where you want the mask to show. And so what you're going to need to do for 11B is apply the Unsharp Mask filter to just this one cupcake. So you're going to have to mask it out. So you're going to paint the mask onto the cupcake. And yes, I'm going to have to go in and clean up my edges, and that's fine. And you can see as I'm going over this what a drastic difference it's making. And you can see over here on the right where my mask is being applied. Now I can make my brush larger, cover more ground a little bit faster. And so to get as accurate of a mask as I can, what I'll do is zoom in and then just come around, and you can see where I've gone over on the edges here. So I'm going to use my brush. Make sure you've got your Smart Filter mask selected. I'm going to switch to black, and I'm just going to go around the edges of my cupcake here with a very small brush in some areas so that I can see and ensure that I didn't sharpen an area that I did not want to. And now if I see an area that I feel like should be sharper, I just switch to my white brush and come in and make sure I've got that painted white for my mask. Switch back to my black. Once again, I'm coming through and cleaning up my mask. I will want to make sure that I've got my opacity set at 100%. Makes a difference when you're zoomed in. If you go over something that you feel like you need to come back, like I did this tip right here, I just switch to white and then come in, clean up that edge a little bit more. And you're going to do that around this entire left cake pop here. And so when you're through, what you can do is you can zoom out And to verify that you've got an accurate mask, you can come into your Properties panel, make sure that your Smart Filter mask is selected, click on Color Range. You can see where maybe you've missed some areas. And so right now I've got Quick Mask selected. I'm going to say OK. And you can see different areas that I actually need to go in and finish masking. So I can Command D to deselect. And then painting in white, go in. Now, if I select Color Range, we see the entire interior is selected, but I have quite a bit of cleanup work that needs to happen around the edge of my cupcake. And so I'm going to cancel out of that, reduce my brush size, make sure that I'm zoomed in, make sure I'm painting with black, and come in around my edge here and go around the entire cake pop. And so when you're through masking out the one cake pop, next you're going to want to mask out the stem. So I'm going to switch to my white and come down and make sure that I am only sharpening the one cake pop stem. And now I can click on Color Range. You can see it's outlining my cake pop and my stem. Click OK. Command D to deselect. And you can see when I turn the Smart Filter on and off that that filter effect is only being applied to the left cake pop. Now I do want to change my blend mode to luminosity, and that will take care of any color shifting that's occurring by the application of my sharpening filter. When you're through, you're going to save this as 11B, so Command Shift S, 11B, your last name, underscore cakepop.psd. Make sure it's in your Chapter 11 folder and click Save.